Real stories of werewolves, of Dogman from history, from your emails, illustrated and animated with the democratizing magic of machine learning AI. Welcome to Scary Stories.
The Guardian of the Woods. Dear Scary Stories NYC, I'm going to tell you the story of my experience with the Dogman. The first time I saw him was at dusk, that in-between time when the woods transformed from something familiar into something ancient and unknowable. I was collecting kindling at the edge of my property, the sun sinking behind the tall Michigan pines, when a sensation like electricity ran up my spine. Someone or something was watching me. I turned slowly, clutching my bundle of sticks to my chest like a shield. At first I saw nothing but deepening shadows between the trees. Then movement caught my eye, a massive silhouette detaching itself from the darkness. My breath caught in my throat. It stood at least 7 feet tall, maybe 8, balanced on powerful hind legs that were unmistakably canine. Its broad shoulders and chest tapered to a narrow waist, covered in dark fur that rippled with muscle underneath. But it was the head that made my heart stutter. A wolf's head, elongated and fierce, with a muzzle full of teeth that gleamed in the fading light. Its ears stood erect, pivoting like radar dishes moving toward every sound in the forest. What held me frozen wasn't fear, although the fear was certainly there. It was the creature's eyes, amber and intelligent, regarding me with an awareness that was impossible and unsettling. Those weren't an animal's eyes. There was something knowing in them, something almost human despite the monstrous form they belonged to. Maybe I should have screamed and maybe I should have run, but instead I stood transfixed as those eyes held mine across 30 feet of clearing. The bundle of sticks in my arm slipped from my numb fingers, scattering at my feet. The sound seemed to break some invisible tension between us, but the creature didn't flee, and the creature didn't charge. It simply tilted its massive head, studying me with what I could only describe as curiosity. A chill autumn wind rustled through the trees, carrying the scent of pine and earth and something musky that I couldn't quite identify. As the breeze touched my face, memories flooded back. Memories of when this place had been a sanctuary rather than a prison. Memories of the time before I was alone. My husband Tom and I bought this little house in the woods in northern Michigan 5 years ago. We'd found it during one of his rare breaks from long-haul trucking, a 2-bedroom cabin with peeling paint and good bones, tucked away on 3 acres of pine and maple. Our retirement plan, he called it, though retirement was still years away, or so we thought. You'll get lonely out here while I'm on the road, he'd worry, but I kept telling him I wouldn't. I had grown up in rural spaces and craved the quiet after years in Detroit. Besides, Tom was never gone for more than 3 weeks at a stretch, and when he returned, he filled the house with his booming laugh and endless stories from the highway. We settled into a rhythm, me tending to the garden and fixing up the house, him driving his routes and bringing home enough to keep us comfortable. On his home weeks, we'd explore the forests, fish the nearby lakes, and then dream about the day when his trucking would be over and we could grow old together in our woodland haven. I never expected that day would come so soon or so cruelly. The call came on a Tuesday evening in October. Tom's truck had jackknifed on an icy mountain pass in Oregon, halfway across the country. By the time the highway patrol reached him, he was gone. Just like that, I was a widow at 43, alone in a house that suddenly felt too quiet and too empty. The weeks after Tom's passing passed in a blur of paperwork and phone calls. He was cremated in Oregon. I couldn't bear the thought of the journey to bring him home, and his ashes arrived in a simple wooden box that seemed too small to contain the man that I had loved. Tom had always been practical. The life insurance wasn't a fortune, but it paid off our modest mortgage and left enough to keep me afloat for a while. His trucking company sent a condolence card signed by people I'd never met. His fellow drivers called with stories I'd never heard before. Strangers knew parts of my husband that I never would. "Are you selling the place?" people asked, as if it were a foregone conclusion that a woman alone wouldn't want to stay here. But the thought of leaving our dream, incomplete as it was, felt like losing Tom all over again. No, I'd say firmly, this is my home. At first, the small community rallied around me. Sarah from the general store would add extra items to my order, that were just going to expire anyway, she said. Pastor Mike organized a rotation of church members to check on me. Even gruff old Earl from the gas station offered to look at my furnace before winter set in. But as weeks turned to months, something shifted. The casseroles stopped coming, the check-in calls grew less frequent, and new faces began to appear at my property line. Those brothers were first Brett and Kyle, known troublemakers whose family owned the scrapyard 3 miles down. They showed up one afternoon as I was stacking firewood. "That's good oak," Brett said, leaning against my woodpile. "Tom always did know where to cut." "Must be hard maintaining all this land by yourself," Kyle added, kicking at the pile. 3 logs tumbled down. They left with a promise to keep an eye on the place, which felt more like a threat than an offer. After that came this guy Raymond, a township supervisor, with slicked back hair and a smile that never reached his eyes. He brought papers about easements and access roads through my property that would connect to land his brother was developing. When I refused to sign, his smile vanished. Think about it. A woman alone needs friends in a place like this. Others followed. A hunting party that, quote, got lost, unquote, but seemed to know exactly which part of my land had the best deer trails. A utility worker who insisted he needed to check inside my house. 2 teenagers who roared through on ATVs, tearing up my garden before I could confront them. Each encounter left me more uneasy than the last. I started locking doors I'd never locked before. I bought a dog, a German Shepherd mix named Buddy, who was more companion than protection. I stopped walking the forest trails alone. I'm not sure the town had changed at all. I think it had simply revealed itself. Without Tom, I wasn't a neighbor anymore. I had become prey. The first hard frost came early that year. I woke to a world glazed with ice, the morning sun turning every branch into crystal. Buddy whined at the door, urgent for his morning relief, and I let him out when I put the coffee on. His barking brought me running 5 minutes later. 3 pickup trucks were parked in my driveway. Mud-splattered 4 F-150s with gun racks in the back windows. Kyle and Brett stood by the first one. Raymond by the second one. The third held 2 men I recognized from the bar in town. Buddy circled them, barking frantically but keeping his distance. "Good morning," Raymond called cheerfully, as if this were a social visit. "Hope we didn't wake you." I pulled my robe tighter, suddenly aware I was outnumbered and underdressed. "What do you men want?" "Community meeting," Brett said with a smirk, "about these woods." Raymond stepped forward, all business now. "There's been some complaints about your property, ma'am. Concerns about upkeep. Safety issues. Town's considering a mandatory inspection program for remote homes." "There's no such program," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "There will be after the next council meeting," he replied. "Unless certain properties get voluntary assessments. Today." Kyle was already walking toward my shed. "We'll just have a look around. Maybe start with that workshop that Tom built. Heard he had quite the tool collection." "Get off my property," I said, reaching for my phone in my pocket. "All of you. Now." Brett laughed. "Who are you gonna call?" "Sheriff's 20 minutes away if he answers at all." Raymond put on his concerned face. "Don't make this difficult, ma'am. We're here to help. A woman living alone in these woods, why, it's just not safe." They began to spread out, circling me like wolves. Buddy growled, backing toward me. "I'm not alone," I lied. "I have family staying with me." "Funny," Brett called from near my woodpile. "Only one car here. Only one set of tracks in this frost." My heart hammered against my ribs. They had planned this. Waited for a morning when I was isolated, when the roads would be empty. "Last chance," Raymond said softly. "Sign the easement papers. Let us assess the property. We can make arrangements about the tools, the timber rights." "And if I refuse?" His smile disappeared. "Well, then we do it anyway, ma'am. And maybe we find code violations that require immediate action. Maybe the township seizes the property for safety reasons. Michigan winters are dangerous for someone as unprepared as you." I backed toward my porch steps, Buddy at my heels. 5 men advanced slowly, confident in their numbers, and in my vulnerability. The injustice burned in my throat. This was my home. This was my land, paid for by my husband's life and labor. Yet in that moment, looking at their cold eyes and calculating smiles, I knew this wasn't about easements, or inspections, or tools. This was about power. This was about a woman alone who refused to be forced out. My back hit the porch railing. Buddy's growl turned to frantic barking, and that's when I heard it, from the edge of the woods behind my house, a sound no human throat could make. A growl so deep it seemed to vibrate the frozen ground beneath our feet. The sound froze everyone in place. It wasn't like anything I'd heard in these woods before. Not the howl of a wolf or the growl of a bear. This was deeper, more resonant, vibrating through the frozen ground and settling in the pit of my stomach. The men exchanged uneasy glances. Raymond recovered first, his politician's smile returning. Probably just a stray dog. Now about those papers. The second growl was closer, deliberate. Not a warning, but a promise. The very air itself around us changed. It grew heavier, charged with something primeval. Even Buddy, who had been barking frantically moments before, fell silent and pressed himself against my legs, trembling. "What the hell was that?" Kyle whispered, his hand moving toward the shotgun in his truck. Before anyone could answer, the massive shape I'd seen at the edge of my property days earlier emerged from between the pine trees. But this time it didn't stay at a distance. It moved forward with purpose, stepping fully into the morning light. The creature stood upright on its powerful hind legs, its body an impossible fusion of man and wolf. Standing at its full height, close to 8 feet tall, it dwarfed even Brett, who was over 6 feet himself. Dense muscle rippled beneath dark fur that shimmered with frost when it brushed against ice-covered branches. Its chest expanded with each breath, releasing plumes of steam in the cold air. But it was the face that held us all transfixed. A wolf's muzzle, filled with teeth too large, too numerous for any natural predator, set in a head that was both animal and not. And those eyes, the same intelligent amber eyes that had studied me before, now blazed with unmistakable fury. "Jeebus," Brett whispered, stumbling backward into his brother. The creature, the Dogman, took another deliberate step forward. Each movement was fluid and controlled, nothing like the lumbering gait of a bear or the skittish darting of a wolf. This was a predator, and it knew exactly what it was doing. Raymond's face had gone ashen. "Get the guns," he ordered. "Now!" The spell broke. Men scattered toward their trucks. Kyle reached his first, yanking the shotgun from its rack and fumbling with shells. The Dogman's head snapped toward the movement, ears pivoting forward, and it launched itself across the yard with explosive speed. 20 feet of distance vanished in seconds. Kyle barely had time to raise the shotgun before the creature was on him. One massive paw swatted the weapon away, sending it spinning into the underbrush. The other closed around Kyle's throat, lifting him until his feet dangled a foot above the ground. The Dogman did not crush his windpipe, although I knew it obviously could have. Instead, it held Kyle there, bringing its muzzle close to the man's face in what looked almost like inspection. Kyle's eyes bulged with terror. His hands clawed uselessly at the fur-covered arm that held him. Brett had made it to his own truck and was raising a hunting rifle when the Dogman, still holding Kyle aloft, turned its head and unleashed a roar that seemed to shake the very trees around us. The sound contained multitudes, rage, warning, dominance, and it echoed across the clearing like a thunderclap. Brett froze, the rifle half raised. The Dogman creature stared him down, then deliberately turned its gaze to each of the other men in turn. I realized with a shock that it was making sure they were all watching. What came next? With calculated slowness, the creature set Kyle back on his feet. Kyle gasped, clutching his throat, but the Dogman was not finished. It placed one massive paw-like hand on his chest and pushed. Not hard enough to injure, but with enough force to send Kyle staggering backward until he collided with Raymond, who caught him reflexively. Message delivered. This territory was claimed. These men were not welcome. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then Brett raised the rifle again, desperation overcoming his fear. "Shoot it," Raymond screamed. "For God's sake, shoot it!" The dogman's head swiveled toward the sound. In the frozen moment before Brett could pull the trigger, I found my voice. "No," I shouted, surprising even myself. Everyone, man and creature alike, turned to look at me. I stepped forward, away from the porch, away from safety. "Put the gun down and leave. All of you. Now." My voice sounded different to my own ears. Stronger, charged with an authority I didn't know I possessed. I felt the dogman's gaze on me, those intelligent eyes assessing, but I kept my focus on the men. "This thing, it lives on your property?" Raymond asked incredulously, finding his voice despite his terror. "This is his territory," I said, the words coming from some deep instinct more than knowledge. "He was here before any of us, and he stays." The dogman moved then, positioning itself between me and the men. Not as threatening anymore, but more protective. It was the same position it had taken when I first saw it at the edge of the woods. A sentinel, a guardian. Brett lowered his rifle slowly, his hands visibly shaking. "You're crazy," he whispered. "Living out here with that monster?" The dogman's lips pulled back from its teeth in what might have been a snarl, or maybe a smile. The message was clear enough either way. Raymond was already backing toward his truck, pulling Kyle with him. "This ain't over," he said, but his voice lacked conviction. "The township will hear about this. This wild animal on your property. This is a danger to our community." "The only danger to this community just tried to force their way onto my land," I replied, my confidence growing with each word. "I wonder what the sheriff would think about that." One by one, they retreated to their vehicles. The dogman watched motionless, except for the slight swivel of his ears, as it tracked every sound, every movement. I stood my ground beside it, feeling strangely untouchable. Engines roared to life, tires spun on frost-covered ground. Within moments they were gone, nothing but dust clouds and exhaust fumes marking their hasty retreat. Only then did I turn to look directly at the creature beside me. It was already watching me, those amber eyes somehow softer now, the tension in its massive frame easing. For a fleeting moment I thought I saw something almost like approval in its gaze. And then, with a grace that belied its size, it turned and loped toward the trees, not running away, simply withdrawing now that the threat was gone. At the edge of the forest it paused, looking back at me one final time. I whispered thank you. The creature inclined its massive head in what could only be acknowledgement, and then melted into the shadows of the pines. Word spread through the town like wildfire. Some dismissed it as mass hysteria or a prank gone wrong. Others whispered about the Michigan Dogman, a local legend I had dismissed as campfire stories when Tom first told me about them. But whatever people believed, the result was the same. No one came uninvited onto my property ever again. Raymond never filed those township complaints. Brett and Kyle found reasons to use the road on the opposite side of town. Even the teenagers with their ATVs stayed clear of my land. For weeks after the encounter, I jumped at every sound from the forest. I kept expecting the dogman to appear at my door, to make some demand in exchange for its protection. But it maintained its distance, though I sometimes felt its presence, watching from the tree line, especially at dusk and dawn. One evening, acting on impulse, I left a plate of leftover venison stew at the edge of the clearing. By morning the plate was empty, wiped clean. It became a ritual after that. Not every day, but whenever I cooked something special. I never saw the dogman take the offerings, but they always disappeared by dawn. Months passed. The township miraculously lost the paperwork about easements across my property. The new development Raymond's brother had planned hit, quote, environmental obstacles, unquote, and was abandoned. I planted my garden that spring without fear. I restored Tom's workshop, and eventually I adopted 2 more dogs to keep Buddy company. Occasionally, hikers will report strange tracks in the woods near here, or hunters will speak of glimpsing something impossibly large moving through the trees. I will listen to their stories with polite interest, neither confirming nor denying. 3 years after that confrontation in my yard, I was collecting late summer blackberries when I glimpsed him again, the Dogman, standing at the far edge of the meadow, watching me with those intelligent eyes. This time I didn't freeze in fear. I simply nodded in acknowledgement. The massive creature returned the gesture, then turned and vanished among the trees. I try not to tell people about my guardian, but on quiet nights, especially when the moon is full, I sometimes sit on my porch and I listen to the sounds of the Michigan wilderness, and occasionally, from far away, I hear a howl unlike any other, deep, resonant, and somehow reassuring. My guardian is still there, still watching, and I am never truly alone in these woods. Thanks to the Michigan Dogman.
2 and 2 is 4, that's simple math. Let's thank our new EP, and her name is Kath. Please join me in welcoming our newest PayPal Club member, Kathy Ader, for making this episode possible. Kathy joined our channel memberships at peterbernard.com, so she gets to see our secret, uncensored Dogman episodes that the public never gets to see. If you'd like to see them too, like today's world-saving superhero Kathy Ader, then listen to what our international TV spokesmongrel has to say about it. Hank?
Thanks, Biggie. And thanks to all of you for watching this far. If you liked it, please click like. If you'd like to see more of our work, please subscribe. And also click that bell icon if you'd like to be notified when we put out a new episode. To become an executive producer, you can donate to us through the thanks button under each of our videos or through our paypal.me/PeterBernard209 page. To receive cool perks like secret uncensored Dogman episodes far too wild to ever run on this channel, you can become a YouTube channel member by clicking the join button, or join our PayPal subscribers club at peterbernard.com. Joining either at the $3 a month level or above gets you access to our over 25 hours of secret uncensored Dogman stories available nowhere else. Do you have a scary story about Dogman or some other kind of high strangeness that happened to you? Let us know by emailing us at scarystoriesnyc@gmail.com or by leaving us a voicemail message at 804-LA-SCARY. You may need to call back on that one. It cuts off after, I think, 3 minutes. And if you don't want to do any of that stuff, thank you for simply watching to the end. Good night, and have a scary tomorrow.
Come back for more scary stories.